Hello Year 7, and today we are starting a new topic about crime scenes, and our lesson for today is going to be about writing risk assessments. So I want you to write the date, title and the LO, and then I want you to try the starter task, please. So pause the video here and I'll continue in 5 seconds. Number 1, which state of matter has particles that vibrate? So that would be a solid. So in liquids and gases, the particles can move to transfer energy between each other. Solids, they can't move, they're in a fixed position, so they vibrate to pass on energy to the next particles. Number 2, what are the disadvantages of hydroelectric power? So one of the disadvantages is that they can only be built in certain places. So they can only be built where there's a river, and some places might not have a river nearby. Another disadvantage is that it disrupts wildlife. You've got to build a big dam in the way, and it disrupts the natural flow of the river. Okay, so those are the disadvantages. Number 3, name the advantages. So the advantages is that it's non-polluting and it's renewable. So it doesn't release anything harmful into the atmosphere and it can be used over and over again without running out. Number 4, what are forces measured in? They are measured in newtons, which is represented by a capital N. Number 5, what is the male part of the flower called? That is the stamen, and it's made up of the anther and the filament. So give yourself a mark out of 5, please, and make sure you've corrected any that you got wrong. Okay, so you are all now members of KS3, that's a mouthful, Crime Scene Investigations, Summerhill. In your job, you will be asked to use your science skills to investigate different things to help solve a crime. Your senior crime investigator, me, will be there to help you in your tasks. Good luck! So first of all, what is a risk assessment? So assessing what might cause harm to people and taking reasonable steps to prevent that harm. So when we do experiments at school, I have to go through a risk assessment so I know that the stuff that you're using, I know how harmful it is and how I can prevent that thing from being harmful. So even things like if you are using a beaker, you still need a risk assessment for that, because if that beaker breaks and the glass goes everywhere and that cuts you, then that is a risk. So the way that I would prevent that is that I would tell you all to be careful with your beakers and to not put them on the edge of the table. Okay, so why do we need it? I've just gone through that. So it's to identify any hazards, why they could be dangerous, and consider different ways to reduce the risks. We'll go through an example now. So here is some hydrochloric acid, and the risks of this are it may be corrosive, so it can cause burns. It may irritate the eyes or skin. It may be harmful if it gets in a cut or in your eyes, and it could produce spillages that you could then slip over. So there are lots of things that are risky about using hydrochloric acid, but we use that in experiments lots of times. So we need to know how we can reduce all these risks. So number 1, it may be corrosive. So if it's corrosive, it means it will burn your skin if it gets on it. So the way that we reduce that risk is we put a symbol on the bottle that tells you it's corrosive, and we also explain beforehand to be very careful not to get any on your skin, and if you do, to tell a teacher and wash it off immediately. Number 2, it may irritate the eyes. So the way we prevent that is you wear goggles. Number 3, may be harmful if it gets in a cut or gets in your eye. So again, you wear goggles, and then for the cuts, you make sure you put a plaster over it. And number 4, it could produce spillages. So make sure the bottle is in the center of the table, and if it does spill, you have to tell a teacher straight away because we don't want you slipping over it. Another example is glassware and my very poorly drawn conical flask. So the way that this is dangerous is that it's sharp, it's fragile, it can cause a spillage with the stuff that's in it, and it can shatter, producing sharp pieces. Now, all of these are kind of similar to each other. So glass is very, very fragile, so you need to make sure you are careful with it. If you drop it, then you need to tell a teacher straight away. When you get glassware, so things like test tubes, people tend to pick them up and just rest them on the table while they go and get a test tube rack. That is not good because test tubes are cylindrical. They have a circular shape, an elongated circle, a cylinder. So if you put them down, they are going to roll off the desk and smash. And if you put it on the desk and then walk away from it, it's going to roll off the desk and smash, and then someone else who didn't know that there was a test tube there might end up standing on all the glass on the floor. So you need to be careful with glassware. So once we have identified the hazard and the risk it poses, we can then put in place some action to minimize the risk. A risk assessment does this by identifying the risk and then identifying the action to reduce it. So the activity I want you to do is, I want you to fill in this table. Now you don't have to copy it down in table form, but I want you to complete it, please. So I'll go through the first one with you. So on this side, we have the activity that you would be doing in an experiment, and then we have the hazard, the risk, and the action. So for the first one, you would need to pour hot water from a kettle. Now, when you think about that, what is the hazard there? The hazard is the hot water. Okay, boiling water would be the hazard. The risk, how is it dangerous? So boiling water can burn your hands or any part of your skin. It can also cause a spillage. The action that you would take is to be very careful with the kettle. If you get any hot water on your skin, you need to run it under a cold tap straight away. And if you spill any on the floor, you need to clean it up immediately. Okay, so I want you to fill in this table, please. And that is the end of today's lesson. I hope you all have a wonderful day.